My name is Matt Wodica. I am the president of medical affairs for Inizio. I'm here at ASCO supporting various companies with several presentations, and I think as everyone saw yesterday, many of the oral presentations have parallel publications in major scientific journals. Many of our team on the medical division is responsible and working on those publications. And today, I think I'm quite excited about the plenary session going on, and actually as we speak, I know that the non-small cell section is going on down the hall, so I'm very excited to see the new data that is going to be presented today, and that's why I'm here in Chicago. I would say that at a certain point in time, the oncology community was almost exclusively about the science, shrinking tumor size, ameliorating cancers from the blood. And as time went on and we started to see real innovations over the last 15 to 20 years, patient care got a little bit more front and center, right? And even incorporation of the patient voice was a little bit more front and center. So I think medical affairs plays a critical role in the incorporation of the patient voice into the treatment paradigm. And I also think that the practicality of the science versus just the raw implementation of the data is where medical affairs can play. I would say first, one of the things that's really critical here is flawless execution, making sure that everything is correct, making sure everything is right, making sure everything is done on time, and making sure that we are on the front foot when it comes to navigating the kind of evolution of the scientific dialogue almost on a daily basis. And the second part really is curiosity, because what you learn from this kind of weekend, this long weekend, does dictate what the future of care is going to be and what the future of medical affairs needs to be. I think that that's one of the tenets of what medical affairs does, is that how do you, the translation of an endpoint of 3-month survival doesn't tell the full story. How do you ensure that that additional survival is not numbers for the sake of numbers, but actually quality time for both the patient, but also for the patient's family? And so I think the application of the science towards the longer kind of value for the patient is critical. Every example, every launch, I've been a part of over 25 launches in my career. And the earlier in my career, which is going to date me, so I'm not going to tell you the dates. That's embarrassing. But I will say, when we did it, medical affairs was a little bit more kind of like the medical arm of the commercial organization, right? And then as time evolved and as medical affairs evolved, they began to kind of carve out their own unique point of view, specific to around engagement at these meetings, the communication for science, the application of the clinical data into practical care. And so I would say the launches of all of the recent lymphoma indications from a lot of our different companies, and many of the launches that we're hearing about this week are actually medical affairs has played a pivotal in ensuring that everyone understands what the information means to the downstream users, but also to the healthcare systems in general. OncoDaily, clearly the number 1, 2, and 3, no question. Flawless advertisement on that one. You guys can put that one on your webpage. As the population ages, right, and the kind of dynamics of communication change, that you have to get accustomed to things like kind of social media being a primary driver of engagement, and you have to find a way to kind of simplify it and put kind of very bespoke modular elements into the word that tell a full story, but without kind of overbearing people. So to that end, I think different social channels have been really effective, but what is unique about oncology and what's unique about ASCO is the every eye who is interested in oncology care is drawn here for a specific number of days. That same level of focus doesn't exist in a lot of other therapeutic areas in this industry. I would argue the first one is consistency. The first part of kind of maximizing value is being consistent with what your value is. If you're trying to kind of always pick off little pieces, then you're kind of really diluting your message or diluting your value proposition over time. So staying consistent, staying honest. Corollary to that is leveraging all of the various omni-channel opportunities, all the various resources and channels that are available to you, even if some are a little bit historic, paper and print, like I see to my left. Some of the things that we're doing right now, or some of the more live presentations, like really finding a means of taking that same message, delivering it in targeted, nuanced, thoughtful ways, in various formats, over a certain period of time too. Because remember, like, there's only what your story is only going to matter, has a shelf life of days versus months. So finding out how you maximize that short period of time with all those various channels. I would say the ability for medical affairs to know when and where and how to look for an insight and how to action that insight with something practical, as versus assuming that once you hear something, you have to react to it. So understanding when to listen, and most importantly, knowing what your NBA is next, what your next best action is really going to be. That's a good question. I would say in my experience, I'll tell a different story to it. I was at an advisory meeting several years ago, and it was with a variety of clinical scientists, or a variety of physicians, and the physicians were scientifically astute. They knew what to do from a trial perspective. They knew the endpoints to look at, and they knew what to do when it came to practical application if patient. But they didn't know how to engage that patient, because they saw that they have this toolbox that they learn as they go through medical school about their job is to solve problems from a scientific perspective. Their job wasn't to necessarily solve problems from a human perspective. So the ability to translate that idea in a thoughtful way, not just to the patient community, within a healthcare systems community, I think is one of the foundations for medical affairs. The other part is the communication of the science. At that same meeting, which was in Phoenix, Arizona, we got into a wonderful, wonderful argument about how there is no track on the fellowship kind of pathway for them to learn how to communicate science effectively, making it easy to see and understand. Like, if you go to these, have you been to some of these slide presentations? It is chock full of stuff that you don't need to know. So I would say the number one way to be memorable is to have a good editorial eye and remember what you want people to remember, and only show that. People only need a single image to remember what that image is. They don't need to be met with an image in 17 bullet points hereafter. I would say, I think AI will play from a content perspective, from an efficiency perspective, it'll play an enormous role. I think the one area that we haven't been as explicit in leveraging, that I'd like us to do more of, is actually leaning into the role of AI in a research setting to find efficiencies there. That's a space that is still ripe for a lot of opportunity. And while it's not as explicit to medical affairs, I think it's eventually going to be one of the foundations of where AI can be, both in science and in healthcare. The hardest leadership lesson was when I was in charge of an Asia Pacific team, and I communicated what I believed was a very well thought through strategy, and had no awareness about how both, I'll say, colloquial and American my voice was, and how I was not understood by the team. And so what I thought was a very clean, specific strategy then was reflected back to me as they had no idea what I was talking about, firstly. It was a very early lesson. It was a very easy lesson to correct, but it was quite humbling at the same time. And so I think that sometimes making assumptions about what you really know versus listening first and then applying your kind of knowledge would be, that was this novel lesson. At one point I was part of a transition where we kind of merged two companies together, and I was one of the leads on that integration, and it took approximately 9 months to do it. But most importantly, it was We were effective. We built a strong structure, a strong team, a strong ethos, strong culture, and it was really it translated into a long-term growth and a long-term design. So I would say that's probably that integration is probably where I was most proud. It's probably listening more than talking, meaning because I think you can do something really good and you can share it, but what's most important is after you share it, understanding what it means, really taking that emphasis to listen to what people reflect on or where they see your gaps so that you can determine the applicability.
How do I find work? I don't answer my phone. I have 2 children, and I had a very particular family event 3 years ago that has forced me to take my work-life balance very, very seriously. So it's very easy for me to just not answer things and not be. I would say, for me, they got all these like mindfulness books and all this stuff from Hawaii, right? There's a lot of really, really fun stuff. But if you really want, from what I find is, if I'm reading a book, I like a lot of stuff from Philip Roth. I think he's an amazing author. Everyone should read him if you haven't done it already. And then also I will find books that are comedic books that just make me escape something. As for movies, I don't know. Right now, I'm still reeling because the Knicks lost last night, and we should talk about why that is terrible for both the world and for the NBA. So I don't have a very good movie recommendation.
Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to OncoDaily on YouTube. Hit the bell icon to stay updated.